Apologize early on for my excitement. I'm very excited about tonight. So if I seem a little amped up than I normally am, forgive me. I can be a little much.
That's one way to welcome guests, to apologize in advance for being so excited for our guest tonight.
Bring it down. Bring it down.
That's great. Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're going to get started in a few minutes. We're just letting everyone in from the waiting room now, and I want to make sure that we give folks who are running late just a minute or two to sign in before we get started. So just sit back, relax. If you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask any of us. We're here to help you enjoy this virtual event. And of course, if you want to ask questions in the chat, you can do that as well. The chat in Zoom, you can access it by clicking the chat icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen. The chat will open right up, and you can feel free to ask us your questions, or of course, ask our guest artist for the evening. So just hang on for a few more minutes and we'll get started.
Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Thanks for attending our weekly soiree, Mondays with Mooch. Come on in, don't be shy. Take your shoes off, leave them at the door. Get yourself comfortable. And we get to share a nice little hour with you. I'll get to our guest in just a minute. But first, I suppose we should introduce ourselves for those of you who may not be aware. My name is Joe Muccioli. Muccioli was where Mooch comes from. I am the artistic director for Jazz Arts Project, a nonprofit organization that has been bringing world-class jazz events, concerts, and discussions such as this to this area for 15 years now. Of course, we also run high-level music education programs. And in fact, we just finished up the free summer music camp for middle schoolers just Friday, as a matter of fact. We'll get to that in a minute. Right now, though, I would like to acknowledge our platinum presenting partner, Peter Piper picked up platinum presenting partner, Ocean First Bank, for their generous support for our entire season, as a matter of fact. And also, I know some of you are here, donors to our program and other sponsors throughout the years for our efforts. I really appreciate it. And it's because of you and because of your attendance that we're able to continue to bring these kinds of events to you. So, on Friday, we marked the finale of our summer music camp for area middle schoolers. Wow. I have to say it was quite an interesting 6 weeks, to say the least. It was a challenge for us. We had to come up with a lot of new techniques to deliver the educational material in innovative ways. It was more like producing a live TV show rather than a music camp. We learned a lot, mostly by trial and error, but thanks to a great team of seasoned educators, we persevered. And we know the kids enjoyed it and learned a lot because of their smiling faces and because they told us and showed us how much they learned. Well, it's a new world out there in many ways. We're finding new ways to entertain, new ways to communicate, new ways to hold some kind of bond between us all. And that's why we're here tonight. In fact, we have a wonderful guest, Helen Sung. No, not a singer. Well, she may have sung somewhere, sometime, I suppose, and I bet she's tired of hearing that. But I digress. Helen Sung is a wonderful pianist and composer. If I'm not mistaken, she's performed at one of our stages, maybe at Summer Jazz Cafe, and I'm pretty sure it was with Claudio Roditi, our dear departed friend. The word dichotomy comes to mind when thinking about Helen. She was a classical music student and transitioned to jazz in her early 20s. She's the daughter of Chinese immigrants, and so, as in her music, she embodies two diverse cultures while defining her own art and being true to herself. In musical terms, kind of like melody and counter melody working in perfect harmony. Born and raised in Houston, Texas, Helen studied classical piano and violin and attended Houston's acclaimed High School for the Performing and Visual Arts. She went on to study at the University of Texas at Austin, and with the inevitable course change to jazz, she went on to graduate from the Thelonious Monk Institute of Jazz Performance at the New England Conservatory, and she won the Kennedy Center's Mary Lou Williams Jazz Piano Competition. By now, Helen has surely secured her place on the international stage. She has toured Southern Africa as a U.S. State Department Jazz Ambassador, and recent engagements include debuts at the London Jazz Festival, Jazz at Lincoln Center Shanghai, Blue Note Beijing, the Sydney International Women's Jazz Festival, as well as European tours promoting projects such as Sung with Words. Helen has also been seen with many fine ensembles, including the Mingus Big Band and Leah Delario's House of David project. As a composer, Helen has garnered an array of awards and commissions for her original music and her large ensemble arrangements. This exploration of her own original creativity had led to her acceptance at the prestigious BMI Jazz Composers Workshop, where she won third prize at the 2016 composition competition. As a teaching artist, Helen has served on the faculties of the Brooklyn Queens Conservatory of Music, the Newark Boys Chorus School, and on the jazz faculties at Berklee College of Music, the Juilliard School, and Columbia University. She continues to inspire music students through residencies, clinics, and workshops. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Helen Sung.
Hi, Helen.
Well, thank you for that very kind introduction. And it's such a pleasure to be here with all of you. And thank you for having me join you guys for your regular Monday night soirees.
To thunderous applause, I might add.
Y'all are very kind. Thank you.
Welcome, Helen. Welcome, welcome. I do remember that maybe 10 years ago, you graced one of our stages. I'm pretty sure it was the Summer Jazz Cafe with Claudia Roditi, our very dear friend who passed away this year, actually.
Yeah, no, I mean, I just so appreciate organizations like yourselves who love this music. You know, it's a labor of love to present it and to have a venue too. That's just amazing. So, hey, I hope to come back and play on your stage.
Well, certainly, as we open up, there's certainly a spot for you to come and play for us for sure. In fact, you may not remember it or so, but we had at that time there was a 9-foot Steinway grand piano in that room that we used to do our shows in. So you were a Steinway artist?
Newly named in April of this year, believe it or not. So it was nice to have some good news amidst all that gloom and doom over the last 5 months.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's very prestigious.
Thank you so much.
Well, I hate to say what have you guys been doing, but I happen to know that you've been doing a lot.
Well, it's so funny when things kind of shut down. More than one well-meaning person said, "You know, Helen, I bet when this all ends, there are going to be some bad, you know what's, because of all the time you've had to shed and practice and."
You'd think,
but,
right?
But I don't know. These past 4 or 5 months have been anything but relaxing or restful for me, at least.
You're
But
not
I
alone.
am so grateful that humanity, we're all creative. And I think creativity is not exclusive to artists, and it's really inspiring to see how people are adapting and adjusting, and for the music community to still find ways to, as you said in your intro, to connect meaningfully, to share music. So I think after the first month or so of figuring out, like, oh, am I going to be able to survive this, or how am I going to stay afloat, then the live streaming started. It's been such a steep learning curve, and we had our little test Zoom meeting, and we were kind of laughing about how inevitably something goes wrong, or we've experienced so many technical glitches and all the different platforms. So that's been a great experience, though. I taught for several summer jazz camps that went online. I've done my fair share of live stream performances and also workshops and master classes and fun interviews like this. And in 2019, I was the Zuckerman Institute's Jazz Artist in Residence. That's Columbia University's flagship neuroscience department. And I've been so grateful that the folks, I made some really cool connections and friends, namely the Jazz Museum in Harlem, National Jazz Museum in Harlem, and also Arts and Minds, which is an organization that serves those with Alzheimer's and dementias. And I have a personal interest in that because that's affected me and my own family. We started this music and neuroscience series that I've continued to co-partner with the Zuckerman Institute. Like a scientist and we joined forces, and we started off talking about music and memory. In May, June, and July, we talked about music, rhythm, and melody and harmony, and how that correlates with certain things in the brain, which has been so much fun. And we're going to continue that in next month, tomorrow. Starting, not tomorrow, but gosh, I realized September's tomorrow.
Did your parents always want you to be a scientist as opposed to a musician?
They wanted me to be a doctor.
Doctor, yeah.
Much more respectable.
That's what I thought, yes.
Yeah, so I'm so grateful, and because I think this has lasted a lot longer than any of us thought it would, and we still don't know what's coming up ahead. So
exactly.
Again, thank you to society for keeping the music alive, keeping the music going, and opportunities like this to connect with your audience.
Well, we appreciate the fact that you made yourself available and agreed to do this. Certainly, it's great for us to meet with such an artist.
Thank you, thank you, Joe.
You won the Mary Lou Williams Kennedy Center Mary Lou Williams Jazz Piano Competition. That's big.
Thank you.
It certainly is.
It was. I don't consider myself the best competition kind of person, but I was really honored at that because Dr. Billy Taylor started that festival and competition, and I think I won it in 2007 when he was still around and he was there, and to get to meet him and get to know him, and also get to know the great legacy of Mary Lou Williams and just the great debt that I owe her and her female counterparts,
Certainly.
Like Miriam McPartland and Toshiko Akiyoshi, true giants of this music who broke ground, true pioneers. We really.
You'll be happy. Sorry, you'll be happy to know. Last year, our organization focused on women in jazz, and one of our evenings was dedicated to the music of Mary Lou Williams. And if you would allow me, I'd love to play this little clip of you doing showing how Mary Lou Williams taught everyone to swing.
Okay, sure.
Melissa, do you have that video?
Yep. That's the first time I've seen that. They did a good job.
They did a great job. Do you see why I wanted to play it?
Oh, thank you.
When was that produced?
That was from 2 summers ago. I taped that in August of 2019.
Nice.
And that was at Steinway Hall's performance space on 43rd and 6th Avenue. Because I've been afraid to watch it because listening to myself play is hard enough, but to have to watch myself too.
Did they write the script for you? Because you came across really natural.
It was kind of. I had my stuff prepared, but they kept on breaking me down because they wanted it to be very accessible, and Man, they had me sweating at the end. I'm glad you couldn't tell.
That was
They
great.
worked me hard.
It was great. That was awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
That was so
Wow.
much fun. I'm going to watch it again.
Thanks.
I learned something.
Me too. So, boy, I sound smart.
That was great.
Anyway, yeah, Mary Lou Williams.
So I have a question. You mentioned about you don't enjoy watching yourself. So I got I first got introduced to you, I think it was 2015. I think you played at Mohawk Mountain House with WBGO's Jazz on the Mountain. And you were one of Michael Bourne's invited guests. Mm-hmm. And I had seen you at the radio station before being interviewed by Gary. So I knew a little bit of your music, but that was the first time I got to see you live. And I have to say, you are actually the first musician I actually enjoyed watching, because I actually felt like you go somewhere when you're playing, and the way that your fingers are moving, and you're very engaged, but you don't seem tense. So I was just curious, like, just in terms of, it might be a little too personal, but where do you go? Do you get transported somewhere? Are you thinking really hard, or are you just having a great time?
Oh my goodness, that's a great question. I think jazz got me in a way that classical never did. I still remember when I first, I guess, met jazz, really, because, I'm from Houston, Texas. I went to that high school where so many of today's great jazz artists come from, people like Jason Moran, Eric Harlan, Robert Glasper, Kendrick Scott. The list just goes on and on. But I was classical back then, so I just, it was too bad, because I was studying with a teacher from the Russian school. Those of you who have had piano lessons, or actually any kind of classical lessons with a Russian teacher, you know how intense that is. And I really had blinders on, and the classical department was right across the street, right across the hallway from the jazz department. They were just classrooms, right? This was a very small high school, but I didn't have a single interaction with them. So I was off at UT, University of Texas at Austin, that has a fabulous classical department, and a friend of mine, we both studied with the same teacher at UT. One night she ran into my practice room, because that's all we did. All the classical majors were always in the practice room. She said, "Helen, Harry Connick Jr. is in town. We have to go hear him." And I didn't know who that was. And she said, "Don't worry, he's hot. You'll like him." So we went, and yes, he was very cute. He had his big band, and he sang. It was very entertaining. But in the middle of the show, he sat down and played some solo piano. And I didn't know what it was called. It was Professor Longhair, Stride, New Orleans, kind of like what I just did on that video. But he was playing with this ferocity and just energy that was electric. I felt like I had been hit by lightning. I remember thinking, man, I didn't know you were allowed to play the piano like that. Classical pianists were taught to have a beautiful tone. You never bang, and in the swing, I didn't know what that was called, but something about the rhythm was so it just got me. And after that, I went to the music library. I didn't know any jazz pianists, so I started by checking out books, and luckily the library had good books, and then I listened to recordings based on that, and then I stalked the piano professor at UT until he finally agreed. Like, who are you, and why do you keep knocking on my door to give me lessons? And back then, jazz was not so established in school, so it was a small program, and not many jazz students, so luckily I got to do stuff really quickly. They just threw me into the deep end of the pool. And I think that was the best approach, because otherwise I think I would have been dipping my toe in for forever, And so I think that jazz is that kind of music. It's a profound art form. It's noble, it's authentic, it's honest. It requires you to look inside yourself. There's no place to hide. If you really want to play this music, I hesitate to use the word right. Maybe you don't even need to use any word. If you really want to play this music, it made me look inside myself and ask, what do I want to say in this music? What do I have something to say? And I think that is a testament to just how durable this music is. It's something timeless. I think it gets its strength and and nobility from its pretty dark chapter in our country, from slavery, people who are able to still create something beautiful and life affirming and generous. You know, it's such a generous art form. So it just requires every bit of me when I play. So I suppose that's where that comes from.
Well, that was a great answer, and I'm curious. I'm curious when you talk about the ferocity and the history of the music. It spoke to you, and I guess I'm curious about what messages do you think that you're sharing? I mean, as a, you know, I don't know if, you know, are you sharing messages as a woman musician, or are there different things? And I kind of connected a little bit. You know, we just had this passing of this huge superstar, Chadwick Boseman. And one of the things that I learned in listening to his story was underneath his work, it seemed like his goal was always about having a purpose, and his purpose, it seemed, was to inspire people to elevate themselves. And if you look at the characters he played, he definitely did that. So I'd be curious about your music and for yourself. What are some of the messages, and what are some of the things that you feel that you're sharing with your audiences?
Well, you know, I was fortunate enough to study at the Thelonious Monk Institute of Jazz. It's been renamed recently. I think it was last year, the Herbie Hancock Institute of Jazz. But it started out as the Thelonious Monk Institute of Jazz, and they started a program at the college level back in '95. And it started out at the New England Conservatory of Music, and I somehow made it into that class. And it changed my life. And one of the teachers that came through and taught us was the great Jimmy Heath, and he was the master of wise sayings. You know, like he said to me, Helen, now don't BS, you know, there's no BS now, because if you BS your way into this, you're gonna have to BS the rest of the way through. And that's so true. And he said, you know, how learning works is you imitate, you assimilate, and then you innovate, and that cycle never stops. He said for him, learning is like a inverted cone where the top is your goal, but you keep coming back around the same things, but you're at a different point. And of course, we never reach that goal, right? It just keeps opening up greater worlds. And then one of my most favorite, he said, for him, the jazz band stage is true democracy, because everybody belongs there. Everybody has their role to play that they must fulfill. Everybody gets to solo and have their say, but in the end, together, they create something that's more beautiful and bigger than they could on their own. And so, I mean, if there's anything, just this music, it's so humbling, and just getting to know these masters. I mean, our first teacher at the Monk Institute, that for those 2 years that I was, it's a 2-year program. For the class I was in was Clark Terry. Then we had Jackie McLean. Ron Carter was the artistic director. So just getting to stand next to these people and hang next to them and just see the role that they had in making this music and creating it from the ground up, and what they had to endure and persevere through, and yet not be bitter and still be full of love and light. You know, I really think this music was used to help make me a better version of who I could be, like the best version of myself. And I really am so grateful for that, because it allowed me to find myself too. So I think that's what I try to convey in my playing, because I think all of us, you know, you would think it'd be easy to be yourself, but I think for most of us, it's not that easy. It's a fight, you know. It's a process that never quite ends, you know, like even when I was studying jazz, so many well-meaning teachers and voices, you need to do this, less of that, more of this, and then, you know, and you take it all in, but in the end, and this comes back to what I was talking about, the honesty of jazz, I feel like I, as an artist, have to stand behind whatever it is I play, and be okay with it, you know, although, you know, I'm a dreadful perfectionist noise, as, you know, self-bashing and all that, but, you know, balance, and just hopefully conveyed just love, just sincere love for this amazing art form.
Beautifully said. Helen, we have a question in the chat, a few of them actually, but Zach
Okay.
Lorelli is asking about your connection to classical music, and are you thinking about classical music when you're playing jazz, and how has classical music influenced your jazz playing?
I don't know that I consciously think like, oh, I want to do something classical here, I want to do something classical there. Classical music is just part of my soundscape. It was a very important part of my life for 20 some years, and I also played the violin in orchestras. So, I kind of shoved it all to the side at the beginning when I was starting to get into jazz because I was just overwhelmed with everything. Like I said, I was thrown into the deep end of the pool, and and then after a while, I said, you know what? Let me just think back again to um, maybe this is the conscious part. I would start trying to apply, textures that I played and ways of playing to see if I could bring them into my jazz playing. But it's a bumpy road, right? It's never a straight line. So
Certainly
I'm still grappling with it.
but certainly the technique must have
Oh,
improved your jazz playing.
well, yes, that is one thing I'm incredibly grateful to my Russian teacher. Actually, to my first teacher who really laid a wonderful foundation. And I'm grateful for my first jazz teacher at UT Austin who saw that my technique is in place. So I didn't need to worry about that. He knew I would have no problem playing the notes. It's how to play those notes that was the challenge.
That's essentially how to express yourself,
Yeah.
and that's what we all grapple with, like our entire lives, and all artists do for that matter.
Yeah, well, I knew that swing was the heartbeat of jazz, and I wanted to really swing. I didn't want to be someone who was kind of faking it just because I could play the notes, because as Barry Harris has said, you can play all the wrong notes in the right rhythm, and that would sound better than the right notes in the wrong rhythm.
That's very true.
Yeah.
So Zach had a second part to his question. He wanted to know, do you still continue to practice classical music?
Kind of. Yeah. When I was so lucky, I finally got my Steinway B in February, and it's been really fun. It forced me to move because I couldn't have it where I was living before. So I said, "Isn't that the nerdiest thing ever? You have to
That's
move because of a piano."
that's the best thing I've ever heard. I need a
You
bigger
had to move because of
apartment.
the piano?
I need a
Well, in
bigger apartment because I have a
retrospect,
bigger piano.
well, in retrospect, what a blessing because I would not have been able to do all the live streaming and this is a beautiful instrument. And in the course, I hadn't moved. It was that place I lived was the only place I lived since I moved to New York, which was over 20 years ago now. And so it forced me to look through what is all this stuff I have, and then I pulled out all this classical piano. And that was one thing I did do in the early days of the shutdown. I just would open up a classical book of Chopin or Brahms or Debussy and just read through stuff. And that was very, very soothing and fun.
So my follow up to that would be, does it influence your composition?
Yes, yes, it does. Especially with instrumentation and form. So I think one thing that the challenge of composition was something. First of all, as a classical pianist, you never think about that because that's something that composers do, right? I'm a pianist. But then when I got to the Monk Institute, I'll never forget Ron Carter said to us, if you want to develop your own voice, you need to write your own music. And so he would come through every 2 to 3 weeks and work with us. It was a class of 7 students that formed a jazz septet, and we would have to have a piece ready for him, which he would critique, and the class would play through. And that was such an amazing education to, have comments from him and also all the other master teachers. And that started me on a journey of writing, and it's been amazing. You know, to play your own music and have other people play it. There's nothing quite like it.
Certainly. I mean, after all, jazz is essentially derivative of classical music. All of our harmony, all of our form really
But
comes
not the
from
rhythm.
it. Not the rhythm. That's right, not the rhythm.
Yeah, no, that's the beautiful amalgamation, right? That happened in New Orleans, in different cities, just because the Africans were not allowed to keep they were not allowed their own instruments, they were not allowed to keep their musical traditions. So they, like all geniuses do, made do with what they had, and look what they came up with, you know.
Also, many musicians looked back at classical music as they got more and more into jazz. They looked back at classical music to study really the roots of their music, or part of the roots of their music anyway, and started informing new jazz compositions by that.
Yes, yeah, and I think that is another thing I love about jazz. It's really unique because it is a music that can take in any kind of influence, other musical influence, but yet still remain jazz. I don't think there are many art forms that can do that. And in turn, it has influenced every form of popular music in this country, and it is a global music. And so that's super cool.
Sure. Well, Richard's iPad, wherever that is, says, I heard you on Marion McPartland's radio show some years ago. What was it like playing duets with with a veteran of the swing era?
Oh, it was terrifying. Oh, she was so kind, though. She was so generous. She put me at ease. I did the best I could, and we just had a great time talking in the studio. And I still remember she started out by asking me, "What is your opinion? Which is more comfortable, elastic waistbands or zippers and buttons?" She was like, at my age, I prefer the elastic waistbands. So she put me she started me laughing. And, she's had everybody. So I think a play on her show, right? All the greats. And so that just put such a warm human touch on things, because I was simply terrified, to be perfectly honest.
Well, she wouldn't have had to ask that this year. It's hands down last.
I still would have been terrified. She's the grande dame, right? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, exactly. What are your thoughts on modern jazz composition as compared to 1900s jazz composition? Do you feel different energies from these compositional, I need new glasses, epochs, I guess, or does the feeling of jazz supersede epochal differences? Is that the word?
It is tonight. No, I think it is.
Hey, Joe, I skipped reading that question because I was like, I can't say that word.
Oh, man. I think jazz is in an interesting moment right now, as is all of art, because up till now, art had a chance to evolve and grow at a kind of a more organic pace. I don't know how else to put it. Right now, everything is always available at every moment, and I think that is challenging for the jazz artist, because it is a music that doesn't ever become irrelevant, in my opinion. So the business part of the music, I think, has tripped, I don't know what the word is, tripped things up a bit, because jazz has this incredible catalog that continues to be popular, and rightly so. But then as the business, it's always the business side of things, right? Because record companies struggling themselves with the changing landscape, they know that the catalog will always sell. They're very, they don't really support artists like they did back in the day. Not these, well, not they specifically, but just record labels. But then it's hard because times change. So that, along with everything always being available all the time, I think really real, what's the word, genuine growth and development of anything takes a lot of time. It takes reflection, it takes solitude, but most importantly time. And that's one thing I feel like as a society we have less and less of for some reason. Everything is speeding up all the time. I want it now. And then people are rewarded for that, so to me, the art suffers because you can't really force artistic growth or discovery, but then you have to make a living. And so all these things that to me that are competing for your time and your energy, which are limited, which aren't really conducive towards genuine growth. It's hard, as an artist. I think each person is different, and we have to decide what are we willing to do or not do in the name of that. So I think jazz right now is kind of a reflective of this time. It's all over the place, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It's
as music and art always is. I mean, art and music is really known in hindsight. I hate to use that in the year 2020, but hindsight is how we understand music. We understand Bach because we study him after the fact that he wrote it, right? Bach, when he was writing music and creating the rules that we abide by now, he had no rules. He was writing some of the rules, or
he was creating the rules.
He was creating them, maybe not even consciously.
Yeah.
But in hindsight, we study him and we learn so much from it. Similarly, today in today's jazz musicians, we'll study them in hindsight and we'll learn from them.
Yeah, I mean, and also the advent of electronics into music, that's another huge universe that is just endless. So I think jazz is really eclectic right now. It's very exciting. I think there's a lot of room for everybody, and I just wished the business people would realize that too.
So,
just my take.
So my next question is that you're sitting there next to that beautiful piano, and I think you have your own show. You stream, I think. Don't you stream a show once a week? Is that what you're doing as well?
Oh no,
Oh,
no.
not once a week? You're not streaming? Oh, okay. I thought you were producing a show or something.
Oh yeah, that's the music and neuroscience programs, which
Oh, okay.
we've been doing. We're going to start again in September, 2 times a month. One is for the clients of Arts and Minds, which are folks with Alzheimer's and dementia, because music is such a powerful tool. I've seen it firsthand in our programs. It's like music sets somebody's spirit free. It's amazing. So if all of you know someone who could benefit from that program, the first program is always for that population and their caretakers. That's going to be on September 25th, and then one for the general audience on September 29th. And it's two times a month. It's plenty. And,
Do we have any links that we could share of those performances?
well, not yet, because there are going to be Zoom links kind of like this. So if you don't mind going to my website, helensung.com, for those
Can
who,
we post her websites and whatever Facebook pages?
yeah, I'm on
we have?
Facebook. You can always find stuff there. Links to, I believe the Arts and Minds program is always a Zoom seminar like this, and the one for the Jazz Museum is a live streaming on Facebook. So you would just go to the National Arts Museum in Harlem's Facebook page. But I always have all those links, so you can just keep an eye out that way.
Jacqueline has posted some links for
Thanks.
Helen in the chat box over here.
Thank
So
you.
I was wondering, might we get the joy of hearing of any of Helen Sung's talents tonight, or is that just tease?
No, sure, sure. I'm gonna move the microphone a little bit, so please forgive me if there are some thuds. Um, so I think I'll do kind of a short medley. The first song will be, this is one of the songs from my latest record, Sung with Words, which is a collaborative project with a great American poet, Dana Joy, but this is actually an instrumental. What I did on that record is I actually wrote music with lyrics for singers to sing, and the lyrics are from his poetry that he wrote for this project. And this is, but I did also write, excuse me, no control over what goes on outside.
Queens.
Yeah. um, but there are some instrumentals on the record, and this is one of them called In the Shadowland. And it's inspired by a phrase from one of my favorite books, The Chronicles of Narnia, where one of the characters is talking about how he feels like while we're on this earth, every human heart feels like we still haven't found our true home, and it's like living in the Shadowland. And then I'll follow that with a song, a standard that I hope you all will all enjoy, and it's by the Gershwin teens. It's called Nice Work If You Can Get It.
Excellent. Bravo!
Wow.
Oh, that was so much fun.
Beautiful.
That was great.
Oh, that was great.
And how often in a virtual world do you get such applause?
Oh my God.
Aw. I know Carmen paid them off. It's all right. I'll pay them.
I got big bucks. I got big bucks.
Anybody who wears a shirt, a print shirt, definitely does.
At the Jazz Arts Project, we like to connect with our artists, and we like to show appreciation.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I have to say that that album that you mentioned was The Convergence. Is that the name?
Mm.
It's quite. If you haven't heard it, I suggest everyone listen to it. I actually think it's a great album to listen to during the quarantine because his poetry really describes going out into the city and to the jazz clubs, and then you kind of go from the poetry into the music, which is really great. But I have to say, what made me laugh was it's kind of saucy. A little bit.
Dana is saucy.
I didn't know that. I was expecting something like, I don't know, very like literary, but I was like, oh no, this is kind of hot. It's got a lot of sensuality in there, which I appreciated.
Oh my God! Dana. When I met Dana at the White House, he was chairman of the National Endowment for 2 terms, and he was the first live poet I ever met. And I remember admitting to him pretty soon after I met him, like, I really don't enjoy reading poetry. And because I was so impressed because I love science fiction, and he knows 2 of my favorite writers, Ray Bradbury and Orson Scott Card, and I was just like, what? And then he was like, well, I write poetry, and And then he asked me, how come you don't like it? And I said, well, I don't like feeling unsure of what it means, you know, and the amount of poetry that I had to read in high school, I always had this nagging fear, like, am I the only one in the room who doesn't get it? And he said something that's so revolutionary, because I think like Leonard Bernstein did for classical music and Wynton Marsalis does for jazz, I really feel Dana has that gift with poetry. He said, read it out loud. Poetry is meant to be experienced out loud. I had no idea. You know, we never, I mean, in high school, you read it and you have to write a paper about it. He said, don't worry so much about literal meaning. Just listen to the words like you listen to music, listen to the syllables, the consonants, the vowels, and then the meaning will come at you sideways. And I started doing that. That's what kind of got me started writing, like setting lines of poetry to music, because I realized when I would imagine a line to a melody, it would illuminate the poem for me. And so he and I became friends, and one day he was like, you know, we need to write some songs together. And now when I read poetry, I actually love it when the meaning is ambiguous. So I really have to credit Dana for reintroducing me to poetry, let's put it that way.
How did that process work? Did you guys work together, or did he send you a poem and then you would put music to it, or how did that process go? And were you in separate states?
Yeah, you know, because he is actually from California. At that time, he was California's state poet laureate. And so he said in an interview, we just did whatever worked. You know, there were some poems where he said, what do you think about this one? And I'd be like, And then other ones he said, I wrote this based on a rhythm that I heard you play. And then there was other ones where I was hanging out with my girlfriends, and you know what girlfriends do when they hang together. We were complaining about dudes.
I think I heard that one on that album.
And so I remember I was kind of peeved about this one dude. I remember saying, I wish people would just say what they mean and mean what they say. And later I said, you know what, that kind of has a vibe, you know, say what you mean what you say. So I called him up, you know, it's like, hey, Dana, you think you could make a poem with this line? He was like, okay, Helen. So it was like just a mishmash of different things. You know, when I was touring, when we toured, like in the old days, I would go to California a lot, and touring would take me there a lot, and I would go see him when I was in the Bay Area, and we'd sit there. He'd read through poems. I mean, if you ever get to see Dana read his own poetry, it's quite amazing. Like, talk about bringing words to life. So yeah, it was such a fun process.
Nice.
Thanks.
Well, this has been great. So this is the moment I take the time to do our a little just thank you to everybody who's with us tonight. I think we have some dedicated audience members who continue to support us. So thank you for coming. Any new people that have joined us, we thank you for coming. We hope you are having a great night with our super talented Helen Sung. And if you haven't guessed right now, I'm super jazz, I'm a super fan. It's ridiculous. But I'm very happy to have Helen with us tonight. And Jazz Arts Project is doing its thing. And, you know, we are making the best of a very challenging situation. And I think, you know, as jazz does, you figure it out, and you come in and you figure out, okay, what are we working with? And so I want to give congratulations to Joe and the team of teachers that worked and did the summer middle camp program, which completed last week. And they did their graduation, their kind of celebration on Friday. I want to thank Jacqueline and Melissa, who keep our show going week to week after every week. And then also we have board members here. I think Alan's here, Steven's here. Is anybody else here board member wise? Want to give acknowledgement to those. So we are still moving, we're still growing, and we're still producing, and we're getting this thing down. And Helen, I've got to say, just so you know, you got quite the introduction there. I think Jacqueline would agree. What a great intro. Joe's been improving week after week after week.
Yeah, so thank you. I'm the beneficiary. See,
you are the beneficiary.
Right?
Yes. Perfect. So we just want to say, I'm going to put up on the screen here, please continue to support Jazz Arts Project. You can give at www.jazzartsproject.org/donate. And click on that link and make your contribution. If you work for a company that actually does matching organizations, that does matches, make your contribution and speak to your company about making a match to your contribution as well. And if you're interested in maybe doing something to help raise some funds, reach out to Joe or reach out to myself. We'd be happy to work with you and do that as well. So thank you guys so much. And Helen, I'm having such a great time. Joe, did I hit it all, Joe?
I think you did, and I just wanted to say that, you know, in this COVID world where we're all at home, we're learning weird new things. So, you know, little by little, I'm learning to put things like this together and introductions together. So, you know, actually, your material pretty much wrote itself. So,
thank you.
you know, so it was a pleasure, and it's always a pleasure to listen to you. So thank you so much for sharing all that with us. And I just have to say that next week we are off. We are not doing a show next week for Labor Day.
Can you do a repeat?
We could do a repeat.
Never even all your shows so far.
Never occurred to me. That's interesting. A repeat. Ay.
A rerun, as they call it.
A rerun. I'll think about that, Carmen. But we'll be back in 2 weeks, and I'll announce that guest in a few days now. But thanks so much for coming. And as usual, we'll have a little bit of an after gig hang, as we usually do.
Do I have one more question for Helen before?
Of course.
So Helen, you know, you've been growing up in jazz, so to speak. I mean, you know, and so it's interesting now. We're all getting older, and so I was curious about who are the people that are coming up behind you that look to you as you would to Marion. I can't say last name, McFarland, or as someone looks to Mary Lou Williams. Are there people looking up to you, looking at your career?
Oh my God! I just consider myself such a perpetual student. But I mean, you know, I've met so many amazing young students in these jazz camps that, you know, I taught for. There's a wonderful trumpet player named Gilbert Castellanos out in the San Diego area. He did something called the Young Lions Jazz Conservatory. And then also for Julius Tolentino of state of New Jersey, he works with the Wharton Center. They did something. And also for Jazz House Kids, give a shout out to Jazz House Kids. So, you know, if anybody would look up to me, I would just be totally just humbled by that, because it's just, you know, this music, it never ends. It's never ending. But there's so many... I mean, and you know, I've done some teaching. I taught at Juilliard for a few years, and also at Berkeley, and now at Columbia. So, if anybody would look up to me, I say, go do the masters.
Yeah. However, Helen, you are the new generation of keepers of the flame.
Yes.
So
yes.
We appreciate that, and wish you all the best, of course.
I take that very seriously.
So as I was saying, we're just about out of time, and we're going to end the official proceedings. But as usual, there's a little bit of an after-gig hang, if you'd like to hang out and chat a little bit.
This is where we get drunk, Helen.
This is where we get
I was
drunk.
wondering. It all hangs out now.
We turn off the recording and stop Facebook, and all the bottles come out, and we start drinking.
Sounds good.
So, and you know, if you guys want to hang out and chat a little bit, that's fine with me. But thanks so much once again for coming. Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Jacqueline. Thank you, Carmen. Thank you, Melissa. And if there's anybody else I forgot, thank you all. It's been a lot of fun. It's my pleasure. So thanks so much, and like that, we'll see you in 2 weeks.